I think it's just important to understand that, like, to not let ego and self-worth sit at the same table, and knowing yourself, knowing your worth, and how much you can charge for, should charge for, so that everyone on your team has success.
Welcome to Blue Collar Bros, a home service podcast focused on scaling family business and finding out what differentiates the best from the best within the industry. We are your hosts, the Yarbrough Brothers. On the left, we've got Colby. On the right, Will. Center, me. And our producer, Bryce, is with us. Guys, let's get after it. The one who gives the market the most and best information will always slaughter the one who just wants to sell a product or service. You always attract way more buyers if you're offering to teach them something of value than you ever will attract by simply trying to sell. That is an excerpt from the book Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes, talking about sales. Today we're going to be talking about the sales process, sales journey, sales development. All of us have done some sales. Will and Colby are currently full-time in sales, but Colby's done the most. So Colby, you're going to be guiding the ship for us today, talking about some sales development and best practices and frequently asked questions. So let's get after it, guys.
The quote basically just sums up what I do, and so we can close out right there. So, so I've jumped in the sales process. I'll talk a little bit more context. So I've been doing it the longest. I was technically, because I was the first one that made it back to Yarbrough, just because of age, location, and so
location very important.
Location.
It's kind of hard to sell things when you're a couple thousand miles away.
It was in a different country. And HVAC is kind of something that you kind of have to be in the location.
Yeah, it's kind of.
And so, but I jumped in, and I was a technician first, and so I spent a lot of time working on systems, using my hands, educating the customer on different parts. And so I think one of the things, and when Dad basically approached me and said, "Hey, like, sales position is opening up. Would you like to take that position?" And I had never sold anything ever before, apart from technician stuff. So like parts that need to be replaced on older systems. And so I was like, "Sure, let's do it. Let's hop in." And I jumped in sales, and I started selling full time 2016, and then. And I've continued to do it every day. We've really kind of honed in where I go to kind of right call. So I spend the most of my time with residential homeowners and residential advising. I do a little bit of light commercial, I like retrofit stuff, but majority of it is strict replacement. So so that basically kind of sums up the story to 2024 and continue doing it this year. So,
you guys, whenever it comes to sitting in front of a homeowner, just going to ask both of you, what's a differentiator that you kind of feel has some weight to it, that gets a lot of to use a word for Will from his time overseas, gains you some wasta, gains you some clout, gains you some clout with that customer. What's a differentiator just that you've kind of found in the process and the journey of selling that really adds to the value of a presentation? Because let's be honest, air conditioners aren't granite countertops; they aren't sexy. So we have to communicate a lot.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That's something too that I was thinking about. So I was on a call yesterday, and I spent like 3 hours at this house, and that's on the longer end for me. But so we've mentioned it a little bit before, but I spent some time overseas, and during that time I taught English, and so the education side of sales is something I kind of tend to lean on a little bit. And so something that like I do whenever I come into a homeowner's house is one, you're spending time with the customer. And a lot of these conversations Colby and I have had, but you're spending time with that customer, getting to know them, getting to know their house, getting to know their system, but then just like walking them through how air conditioning works and how that sets up the context for the different solutions that I'm offering, and so that way everyone's on the same page as to, I'm not just like trying to sell them something to sell them something, but everything that I'm offering them is reasoned out and that we've discussed before. So sales by education, I feel like it's a really big part of that. And so you earn WASTA or social capital because people kind of feel like, oh, hey, you're not just coming in here and like, you're trying to sell me something just to sell me something, make your average ticket higher. But this has a clear, this meets a need. And you've already detailed out that need towards the beginning. And so that's something that I kind of was on top of mind.
Yeah. Education sales, just in our time frame, like, spending 3 hours with the customer, whenever I first started, like you want to build that relationship in the very beginning. And the sales process for Yarbrough and Sons, for how we follow through with things is, it's education. It's education sales. And so, not being in a sales position, I had the same opinion that everybody else had over, like, oh, sales, icky, terrible. But that's not the case. Jumping in, one of the things that I learned very quickly was that you're helping solve problems that people can't solve for themselves. And you're providing solutions that they are not able to, one, do themselves, but two, they may not be able to think of themselves. And so you have to, that creative aspect of it's really, really fun for me personally. And so, but you spend a lot of time educating. You spend a lot of time sitting with the homeowner and kind of going back to the Chet Holmes is like, education is going to win every time. And whenever you spend time with the homeowner and you're educating, you're providing them as much value as possible in the very beginning, you're building trust. You're building that relationship, and you are putting everything up front for the homeowner to see and understand that, like, hey, this is a big purchase. This is very expensive. This is a big expense. And so you want to make sure that the homeowner is as educated as they possibly can be, and do it in a way that is simple to understand. That's not complicated.
One of the things that I think we really lean on a lot of times, and it's just kind of tying it back to another book that we've all read, which is the Visual Sale and They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan. Those two books really kind of inform and kind of paint a broader picture of how we do education-based sales, which is there is no question too big. There is no question that we're not willing to sit there and share. And so, something that we've done from our salesmen down to our service technicians is if a customer asks, for a price breakdown, our team knows how the prices are broken down. Now, it's all percentage based because that's the easiest way to communicate it is out of any given sale. Labor will be, on an install, labor will be 10%, and parts and materials. It all falls back into those margins because it doesn't matter if we're selling a 14-SEER air conditioner or a 28-SEER or a capacitor or a fan motor. The percentages don't change. It's kind of a drum that I've beaten for the last 5 years, which is, the numbers change, the margins don't. But empowering your team to open up the price book per se and flip it around and share that with the homeowner, I think is probably one of our greatest differentiators that we've come across in the last 2 or 3 years. Because whether it's a comment that we get online or anything, we just jump right into it and move head on and show how the price is made. And I think that earns a lot of trust. And when it comes to sales, trust is everything.
Yes. Yeah. It kind of fulfills that they ask you answer style. And as a different differentiator between our sales process and the way that we stand out whenever we're communicating with the homeowners, like, hey, like, I'm with you from the start, beginning to the end to future. Like, it's not one of those things where we install the system and then we bug out, we leave. And so what part of our sales process is like, our salesmen are effectively or essentially project managers as well. And so a part of the process is we've got an extensive note-taking process to help us to communicate with homeowners about kind of what's going on with the system change out. But a lot of that is also to communicate to our install team. So that way they know, one, what they're getting themselves into as far as install goes. And then two, make sure that, if there's anything that we miss, it's on our team to help us be accountable, and we have processes to keep us accountable, keep us in place. And so project managing that from basically from start to finish to beyond. And so whereas like we're not just we call it shotgun sales. Like we don't go do 100 calls a day and on the phone and then I sell the job and then I don't ever talk to them again. No, I sell the job and it's not uncommon for me to talk to people again, in the like 2 years down the road, just answering questions and helping solve problems that need to be solved and whatnot. And that's really helped us stand out because of that accountability, we've created our quality production process. Our quality production manager is one of our most tenured technicians. We moved him where there's a position that we wanted to fill, which was basically quality control. So on every new residential system, we're doing 2 quality control visits on a system, where we basically run the system through a series of tests to make sure that it, 1, satisfies our standards of excellence, make sure we did what we said we're going to do, and then 2, make sure that the system is doing what our manufacturer said it was going to do, and then make sure that we satisfy the customer's needs and wants and what their expectations were. And so those are a lot of our bigger differentiators. Is we really try to be diligent at being there from the very beginning, and then see them through to the very end. So,
hey, speaking of differentiation, I was curious, how common is it for salespeople for companies this size to come from your type of background, where you did do install, you did do service? And do you feel like that's an important quality for a salesman to have in this industry?
Popcorn this one. Will, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I think it kind of depends on like the makeup of the company. So like if the company is like a family owned business, I feel like to have someone in sales that did something else in the company is pretty common. Because you just don't automatically hop into a sales spot, especially like if your family's owning and operating, which we would fall in that category. All of us did other stuff before. But, maybe a larger company that's maybe not family owned or not privately owned, you might have just a sales guy that's more, attuned to the product itself, and they didn't normally do service or install. So I think it just kind of depends on the inception of the company and where it happened, where it like all began. But I think having experience in those other, I'm going to say fields, or those other facets of the business helps inform a lot of the things you can do as a salesman, because you understand the process, you understand the mechanics of how an air conditioner works or how it's installed. And so for something that, it's just on the top of my head, I never did service. So I take that back. I did service, but I was like, I might have been 16. So so, not a whole lot of like, I was never on my own or anything like that. Right. And so, but I did a lot more install. And so when it comes to selling, the technical aspect of, I don't get bogged down in the technical aspect. I know that the technical side of things, just because of proximity information, sharing, just because I've been around it my whole life. But that kind of works in my favor, because I don't ever get like bogged down in the really minute details of the intricacies of how a blower wheel works. You know what I mean? And the average customer is not going to be like, okay, how does that relate to cooling my house off? And so
cold air.
Yeah, cold air. I just want to feel it. Is what I. But so in that regard, I'm familiar for the install portion, right? So in that regard, I lean on some of that stuff, and so I feel like it's, to answer your question, Bryce, I feel like it's beneficial, but it's not 100% like necessary.
No,
but it definitely helps.
I think in the beginning of a company, and the smaller the company is, the more beneficial it is to have somebody who's been on both sides of it, just because you're having to draw from a wealth of knowledge. And so the deeper that you can make that pool, the better. Yeah. And in early stages of business, you don't have the benefit of being specialized. You don't have the benefit of, you do sales. You are a dispatcher. Yes. There's a lot of multi hats that get worn. And even like for us, like at $10 million, and 50 some odd people running around, there's not as much specialization that you'd like to be able to push forward. And so as you grow, then that offers room for specialization. Yep. And so I think that's kind of a copped out answer a little bit, but as you grow, I think it becomes less important for the person who's going to be in that sales seat to have industry experience, and more so be a better, their toolkit needs to be sharper in communication, in empathy, in those other areas. Whereas
relationship building,
like a technician or an installer, might not rank that highly in those areas on a disc profile. And so you can start looking for those specialized individuals as you grow.
Yeah. And this also follows that Michael Gerber mindset of work on your business, not in your business, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the difference. And Tucker and I had some interesting conversations about that. But I feel like that's kind of I think me personally, I've grown so much more in my marketing department. I've gotten so much more familiar with the marketing once I started better understanding the operations that were following that marketing. So for me, it was like, I like to see how the sausage is made. I like to know, I like to have a deep knowledge of all the work that I'm doing and how it's impacting the whole company. So I was just curious what you guys thought.
And it kind of comes down to, I think there is only so many hats that you can wear in any one position.
There's only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, there's only so many hours a day. You only have so many hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So many fingers.
I got two. That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
That's why we lovingly call Dad the $5 million man.
Yeah.
He's wearing all the hats, all the hats he could.
And so I think understanding at what position could you start to have specialized positions is whenever you realize that you become the bottleneck, and having the accountability to take on that. To take on and have the humility to take on that tough answer was like, oh, I'm the bottleneck to our systems. Mm-hmm. I'm the reason why we can't grow. I'm the reason why we can't. The reason why our residential department we're not making any money is because I'm spending too much time doing service technician work or commercial install work.
One of the things that Bryce kind of said, and then you're kind of you're pointing out as well. It's the realization that no matter no position is siloed. There isn't just a singular vertical, and at the end of the day, everything becomes operations. So like how we sell a system and how we take the notes, book the call, do all that feeds into the operations. How we market, like that's an operations piece, and it all boils back to the simple thing of how quickly can information flow? Mm-hmm. And if there's hiccups in that information flow, if there's hangups, if there's bottlenecks, well, then everything in the business becomes less efficient. Our marketing dollars stretch less. Mm-hmm. Our sales are able to do less. Mm-hmm. Our cost to do business increases. And so it's this efficiency game where we can have a marketing department and a sales department and a service department. But at the end of the day, everything boils back to the simplicity of information flow through operations. Mm-hmm. And if that isn't keyed up, then everything in the business is damned to be less efficient.
I think something too is maybe this is an issue, a larger issue than just like HVAC specific. But I think this concept of like, oh well, I'm going to keep sales siloed, I'm going to keep install siloed, I'm going to keep service siloed, and like these. So it's like, yes, that works kind of to a point, but at the same time, like those things communicate. There's overlap between those departments, especially the communication department, especially how you market. So I think you're hitting that point of like everything affects one another, and so it's having all and the speed by which information passes between all of these different things you've got going on affects your efficiency, and then you can raise the level that your business is operating at if you increase the speed and accuracy by which information is disseminated.
Before you go, because I'll forget
Kobe's going to forget.
Hold on to my thought for a second. So before I lose it, I'm going to let Mr. Elephant hold on to his memory. In the sales process, and I think this is something we've learned this past year, was our sales process. I'm going to use that in conjunction with our marketing too. We found out that our operations was our bottleneck. Mm-hmm. Whereas like we didn't have the right operations to back up the sales processes that we had. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the right operations to back up the marketing.
We also didn't have a written sales process.
No, we did not. No, it was very loose. It was the compilation of years of me being out in the field and testing. And so there's over the years I try to implement one thing.
It was unspoken culture rather than the Bill of Rights.
It was, yeah.
And something that Will said just a minute ago that really kind of hit home, but I think it's because of Will's background in schooling and what he did, like anthropology wise and just culture wise. You mentioned that everything informs the other. Mm-hmm. And if you try to silo sales or silo service, or especially in the industry like ours, where 50 to 60% of our sales opportunities come from service. Mm-hmm. If we try to silo these things in their own individual corners, you end up with microcultures. and you can't influence the direction of the company as a whole. And so that's a really hard thing to untangle. And so you got to be really careful. Yeah, you want some divisional lines drawn because there are some things that you need operationally different to be handled.
Right.
But you can't silo them to the point where microcultures birth and then we have problems arise because we don't have speed of information.
Yep. Which is one of the reasons why we take a project management style sales process too, because it's like it is crucial for me to understand like how the system is installed and like what things I should look for. Am I doing an actual investigation on the equipment that they have? Am I actually solving problems that the customer has? Because if I didn't, then it's all magic, and I'm just trying to sell a product and move to the next one, and then that's where microcultures get introduced, where the relationship between myself and the install team can get can kind of wear down, is where it's like, oh man, Colby, every single time I do a job for Colby, he misses something, or he forgets to add something in or whatnot, and like that stuff still happens, but a part of the process is making sure that I do everything that I can in my ability to know everything that is going into this install, so that whenever my guys get out there, they know what's going in. They know exactly the process, and the operations side of things is really seamless. And so slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And if you don't forget stuff, and like I mentioned, there are things that happen, but whenever you do, and you have that relationship and of the kind of the project management style, where it's like I'm making sure that I know what needs to go in, then my relationship between the installers is a lot better. And we give our installers agency to make decisions as well, but it's just crucial for us to know everything up front. So
yeah, and I think too, if people don't have a project management style, I think really it just comes down to talking to your team. The guys that are going over there that generated the lead. So talking to the service team, talking to the install guys, talking to if you have an install manager, talking to them. And so we had a guy, he left recently. He's moving closer to family, and so anyway, he was a great installer. Anyway, one of the things that
out of state too,
I know, so. It's out of state too, so it's not.
We miss him dearly.
I know we do. So
Rusty, if you watch this, we love you, brother.
Yeah, exactly.
Well.
But something that I really appreciated was he did a couple jobs for me, and these are in a short period of time, right? So, but going up to him, I was like, hey, is there anything that I'm consistently missing, or anything like that I'm just not aware of that you guys are noticing? And he pointed out a couple things here and there that were just super small, but they helped the team kind of the install team that was doing the job kind of helped their day flow a little bit better. Yeah. So even if you don't have a massive team or this stuff, I think just being a good team player in that regard, you don't have to be a project manager, you don't have to have all this stuff, but if you're a good team player and you're communicating with the guys on the front end of things and the back end of things, anyone that's taking the call, and just this feeds into everything we're saying, but it all informs one another. And so just being at least aware of how everything informs the sales process or the install process, and I think you're going to be better off, especially that'll help the lines of communication between all those departments.
Well, it's sitting in the financial seat, of the company. It's one thing to have information flow, and information, includes our financials. And so it's super empowering, I think, to our installers, service tech, sales team, everybody, talk about communication, that that once a month we check in with everybody and share the profit and loss, which to begin with, it's super uncomfortable feeling. You feel like
especially in the winter months.
Yeah, you feel like you're not to be too crude, but you're getting undressed in public. Because here we are, we're having to strip down the profit and loss statement to a place where we're going to get down to brass tacks of, did we make money or did we not? Were we able to pay all of our bills this month, or are we taking a loss? And so
are we adding to the profit sharing?
Yeah,
and stuff like that.
And that's where I was going with that. Is we're a profit sharing company, and so by asking those questions of Rusty of how can I be more efficient? How can I catch things that I'm consistently missing? Is there things that could just make your life easier? All of those things breed back to operational efficiency, which then lends to profit sharing increases. And so transparency and communication at all steps of the journey, through the sales process with the homeowner to how the salesman then communicates with the install team, and then so on, it all funnels back to profitability.
And the salesman, it is crucial for you to have the humility to ask, hey, where do I suck?
And take it on the chin.
And take it on the chin. Because there's so many times where you can get, confidence and ego can get in the way, and you just need to leave that at the door and say, lead from a place of service. Because at the end of the day, like the sales process, anything that we do, the operations side of things, as we've built and as we're continuing to build it out, it is the sales position is a place of service to the homeowner and to the install team and to the service team and to everybody else. And so it is the gate. It is the gate at which everything is produced. Any success that we have in the company starts at the sales team, because we have to sell something, because if I don't sell an install, then the install team doesn't have anything to do, and so having the humility to take it on the chin and say, hey, where do I suck? Where can I get better? And having that honest conversation and being able to take that criticism and do something with it and get better. And so that's that's my biggest request for anybody is have the humility to ask, where do I suck?
And I think that extends beyond just this, everyone's a salesperson. Yeah. Everyone.
Yeah.
Service tech, a CSR dispatcher, everyone is a salesperson. So it is operating with enough humility to ask the hard question of, hey, how can I get better? And then altering behavior because of it.
Yeah, I think so. Something that I remembered. So I helped do. We've got a lot of different irons in the fire as far as just business stuff goes. And I did a lot of stuff with like real estate and stuff. And so there's a guy that is a pretty big real estate guy, Mr. Grant Cardone. Different people have different opinions about Mr. Cardone, but something he said that really stuck with me was he was like, No, it doesn't matter what you do, who you are. You're constantly selling. If you have a girlfriend, if you've got a wife, you sold her on the idea of you. And so this idea that sales is just this kind of like, it feels kind of icky, or, Colby kind of mentioned a little bit before. People have these weird concepts or feelings around the concept of sales just because we have this idea in our head of what sales is.
People have been burned by bad sales practices.
And so, but it's this idea that no matter what you're doing in life, you're trying to sell yourself. You're trying to sell, especially if you want to take your wife or kids on a vacation, you're selling the idea of this concept, and so, or you want to go golf on Saturday mornings. You're selling the idea to your wife, like, hey, I really want to go golf on Saturday mornings. So it's getting beyond that idea of like this insurmountable thing that like you've got to do. And so, but it's this everyday practice. So whether you're the CSR, whether you're the technician, whether you're the actual sales guy or the installer, you're all a part of this process. And so that's a huge component of kind of everything we're talking about here. But I think Colby hit it too, like having that humility to ask where you can improve, and not that we have any corner on the market. Like, we're still learning and growing, and I make mistakes. I know Colby makes mistakes, and Tucker Bryce never makes mistakes.
No,
so that's
never,
absolutely
not at all.
So to like, we're sitting here on this podcast and talking about sales, and it's not like we're talking at this from a place of, I've got everything figured out. We're very much a part still in the process.
We have the humility to say that there's still a lot of stuff we need to learn.
The more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know.
It's like the more I learn, the dumber I feel. So apart, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, the best salesmen in the world have the ability to paint a picture in someone else's head that doesn't exist. Mm-hmm. And so you're able to paint a picture in, if it is your vacation, you're like, hey, honey, let's talk about something for a second. Just imagine you sitting on the beach.
And vacation shouldn't be a hard pitch.
It's not a hard pitch. But like in translation to HVAC, like, hey, let's talk about a professional install. After this is said and done, you're gonna have cold air, you're gonna have warm air,
and we talk about it all the time. It's we're not the giant in our market by any means.
No.
But the bar for customer service within the home services is so low. It is so low. So doing anything above that bar is a differentiator.
Yeah.
And setting down and being willing to have the conversation to paint the picture.
Yes. Yeah.
And show that, hey, I'm not just here to slap a box that gives you cold and warm air in.
Yeah.
Is a differentiator, and lean into that as a piece of the process,
Mm-hmm.
because otherwise you will be contributing to the ever decreasing bar within the home services.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like soft skills is the one thing you can plug into your team. Like it's a huge lever that you can pull, right? Because if hearing what Tuck says about, I'm asking why. Why is it that the bar is set so low? Is it because we don't, as business owners, we don't put forth that effort to invest in our team to develop those soft skills, to know how to have maybe difficult conversations? What is that exactly?
Yeah, I think it's time. I think it's it's the perception of time. It's the perception of lack of time to invest in training and invest in getting better. And it's kind of like what we've already touched on him, but Michael Gerber talked about. Most businesses are ran by a technician having an entrepreneurial seizure.
That's where I was going. Yeah.
It's not a
Can you repeat that? What was it?
so Michael Gerber in E-Myth, he talks about it. He says that most businesses are being ran by a technician who's having an entrepreneurial seizure. So they have, bless them all, but they had no business running the business in the first place. And they're out there running the business as if they're a technician. And that's how most businesses start. That's how Dad started.
Yeah.
But just
I think I can do this.
through just stubbornness or pig-headed determination,
Yes,
as
there
Chet
you go.
Holmes calls it.
There you go.
He was able to hack it and keep pushing forward and grow and add and grow and add. But most people don't have, I don't think, the risk tolerance it takes to be willing to add more team members and add people who can take things off your plate, because it's easy and it's addicting to sit there and think no one can solve this problem but me.
Yes. Yeah.
And that's why things don't get delegated. That's why we don't ever invest in the communication skills of our team or the soft skills of our technicians, because we have this like dumb belief that, well, they couldn't do it like me, so I shouldn't even like try, because that's just who they inherently are.
Right.
But we practice tackling, I say we as if I'm one of them, but it's like in the NFL, you see players, they practice tackling from the time they're in Pee Wee to the time they're in the NFL. They do substantially less of it, but they continue to practice tackling. Yep. And it's not because they've decreased in how they can tackle, but it's because they want to maintain their sharpness in the fundamentals.
Yes.
And that's something that I think most small businesses, because of lack of time, don't do.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, it's addicting to say that I have the solution. It's addicting to be like, I am the answer to every problem I might face, And so, I mean, I think it even goes back to, the statistics on businesses, reading through the Adam Coffey book,
Do you want me to Rain Man it?
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Cause I'm not gonna be able to, but
So-
I'm teeing you up.
So 33 million small businesses in America, and it is 2.3 million of those will ever reach $1 million in top line production. So it's like 2%, or 1 point something percent.
Yeah.
And then of those 2.3 million that will ever make it to, $10 million, that's kind of a great divide. It's less than 93,000 businesses will ever make it to $10 million. And so, again, football analogy. You start with 331 Big Houses of Michigan, the largest college football stadium in the country. Then we go down to 23. And then we go down to 1, less than 1. And then if you're going to go from 10 to 20, it's like 2,700, 2,800 businesses, which is the Blanchard High School football stadium.
Yeah. And
So,
whenever you're saying business, small businesses.
Yeah, small
So what are
businesses,
considered small businesses?
yeah. So SBA considers the small business line is like everything privately held under $100 million.
Okay.
So 33 million, and then by the time you get to 20 million, you're less than 2,900 companies.
Yeah. Yeah. And then how many employees?
I don't know.
Is it a? Oh, okay.
I have no idea. There's not a line really. It's,
Okay.
it's more of top line.
Okay, cool.
But so that's the curve though, is at every step it gets harder to invest in your team, because you need speed of information, you need processes, and like bring it back to what we're talking about today. You have to sell a lot of air conditioners to be a $20 million company, a $30 million. You have to move a lot of air conditioners to a place where you need to be dialed in on how information flows.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking about just how as like small businesses and then just kind of what you're talking about earlier, how most, especially HVAC related businesses, are started by companies that are started by guys that were techs, and so I was thinking about like the disc profile, the personality profiles of the guys that start these businesses, and so they're not like, business, like gurus and all this kind of stuff that like know all these numbers and know all these processes and know all this stuff. At the beginning, they're guys that are just, oh, hey, I can fix stuff. So you get you get a lot of kind of like what you're talking about, a lack of time because we're busy. These guys are busy trying to make things work, fixing stuff, installing new air conditioners, and so you don't get the soft skills development, like what Bryce was talking about, to the level at which you need to be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah. I want to jump in on that. Talking about disc profiles. So you guys took the disc profiles, right? You I guess it's a test, right? It's a survey of like what's your personality. What was your takeaway on that? You don't have to go into the nitty gritty, but what'd you learn about working with each other, your leadership styles, and like what where your best position is in this company? So
I have an interesting perspective because I'm the oldest. So it's funny. So like Colby and Tucker are, I've known this since they were little, but like Colby and Tucker are essentially the same person, just they come at a problem from opposite ends, which leads to sometimes they'll butt heads. And this manifested itself a lot more when we were younger. Like, and but whenever we took the disc profile, if you've got a quadrant, right? If you've got, an X and Y axis, Colby and Tucker on the same northern hemisphere of that quadrant, but on opposite ends of the Y axis. Yep. And then I am on the southern end of the hemisphere, but on the same Y-axis, on the same side. I'm on Tucker's side. So it was interesting to see all our three personalities kind of be pinpointed out. But that was just an interesting.
Well, it kind of nails down. So I'm high D. My second is I. Colby's the inverse. Colby's high I, and his second is D. Yeah. Will, you're a high S?
I think so. I'd have to look at it again. I can't remember.
And but in sales. This is just a bit from the Service Nation. Within the sales seat, you want high S or high I and high S. Those are the two that you want because they are your communicators. They are your empaths, and they are able to set down and level with people. Whereas, like, I've known this about myself, and I have sold things, but I can sell to a very select number of people. Whereas I's and S's are able to chameleon to the situation. Yeah. So as a high D,
we like to use the word adapt.
Yeah. As a high D, I tend to be a bit more forceful so that it's I have a harder time empathizing. It's more of a I'll drop a grenade and then walk off, and that's the way it rolls.
Yep. And just for those who are listening that have not done the disc profile, I really recommend looking into it because it helps you understand a little bit more about yourself.
And if you're a part of the Service Nation Alliance, you get them for free. So you just got to send out a request to Chris, and he will get you taken care of. And if you're not a part of the Service Nation Alliance, what are you doing? Join them.
Yeah, and what's really cool is for us, I know that Chris they came down and did kind of a coaching
breakdown.
Breakdown. They helped us understand it a little bit better and whatnot. And so and if you're taking the test, I recommend doing it on the computer. Don't do it on your phone.
So would you implement the disc profile? Let's talk about like if you're a business owner, you're looking to add a top-notch sales guy to your team, and you're wanting to figure out what kind of qualities you need to look for in that guy. Are you going to use the disc profile to determine that, or how do you personally determine that if you are hiring somebody for a sales position?
I think it's an interesting aspect to look for sure. I don't know if it'd be the sole determiner.
I think it would be an informer though.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it would give you a quick snapshot of kind of what you. So something too. I'm gonna chase this for just half a second, but I'm gonna come back. So just bear with me. But whenever I had my other job where I was living overseas, I had to take this big personality profile test. It was around the same amount of questions as the disc profile. It was insane, but they compared us all as a team, and it was extremely helpful. And it wasn't like a comprehensive, like, oh, this is you to a T. It just gave you kind of key indicators for how you typically respond in certain situations and then what your stressors could be and all this kind of stuff. It was really helpful to know. So I feel like disc profile kind of fits in that same sort of category of like, it's not the end all be all on your personality. Not that because personality is a hard thing can't really quantify, a personality to 100%. You can just get close, and everyone kind of embodies different aspects of all of these things. It's just, what do you tend to the most? So I feel like if you are hiring a guy that's going to do sales or something like that, I think knowing a lot of this stuff ahead of time is like, it's a good indicator of like, oh, this person tends towards these sorts of behaviors, but that doesn't give you the 100% picture. And that's going to take sitting down with someone, having a longer conversation. You kind of get a little bit more detail, but
Also, just taking the perspective of like business owners who are looking at this, is this an internal hire or is this someone that you're going to outsource for? Because we're talking a lot about specialization, about like, is this something that you graduate someone internally to, or that can carry your attitudes and values of the company? Because that's a huge part of Yarbrough and Sons, I think, is having the core set of values and understanding what our values are. What's your take on other business owners? Do you outsource or do you internally hire and graduate?
I think it depends on who you have on the bus. So for us,
how big your company is too. Yeah.
So for us, we've promoted from within pretty much constantly.
I technically was a promotion from within.
Yeah.
So.
Nepotism. But
Technically.
it worked out.
Yeah.
But
I was a technician for a year.
2 years.
Well, I mean, I worked during summers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But
Collectively, 2 years.
We've always promoted from within, and it's worked out. But as you grow, I don't think you can nail down with a staunch hammer of this is what we do. You're going to be looking for the best people to fill the seats on the bus, and so first we're going to look internally. That's where we're going to begin, is to look to give opportunity to our team. But if we're growing and we don't have, if we don't have somebody on the bus already who's capable of filling that seat, or if we're going at a pace where we need more than what we can handle at that point, then we're going to look externally. And obviously, by having somebody who's internal, you kind of already have a feel for where they sit on the DISC profile spectrum and kind of know that personality. So we'd be less inclined to do another profile on them and more so on an external hire, just to give us that quicker glance, like Will was talking about, of what their motivators are and what they tend to.
Right.
Yeah. This is an aside too, but something I've said, I think I stick by this. I think it's not fair. Is what it is. It's not. But I've always said, if you want a pretty quick snapshot of someone, is like if they're in a stressful situation, and then how they handle that stressful situation is a pretty good indicator of, because that's a lot of your external sort of stuff that you just kind of put on kind of gets stripped down. When you're in a spot. So I've told this to people, but I was like, if I'm getting to know someone for the first time, and I kind of like, you're kind of you're at that like initial stages of that relationship, I kind of want to see you lose. Like I want to see you play something and lose. And then I want to see how you handle the loss. Because and now, like I said, it's not fair, but it gives you a pretty quick snapshot of the type of person that you're dealing with. And so that's I don't know. I go back and forth on that, but I think I stand by that.
No, I stand by it. It's easy to be a great person when you're winning.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. So anyway, if y'all see me getting to know someone for the first time, and it's like, just know I'm internally hoping they lose.
You sound like Jordan Belfort, Wolf of Wall Street. I don't want you to judge me by my wins. I want you to judge me by my losses, because I have so few.
Yeah.
So talking about sales and getting into the sales seat, obviously you have objections that you reach. So, Colby, if you could kind of tee us off on like external, internal objections. What were some things internally that you're fighting whenever it came to that? Will, same for you. And what are the most common external objections that you get in the sales seat?
Okay, so let's start with internal objections first. So in a sales position, your job is to let go of ego at all costs, because any internal objection is going to be like, well, I don't think that they can afford this, or I don't think they need this product, or I don't think that this is the solution that they are looking for, and then making those assumptions before having asked any questions is just detrimental to one, that homeowner, it's a disservice to them if you do not go through your process and ask them the questions. Talk about budget. Because at the end of the day, it's like whenever you're sitting in front of a homeowner, it's like obviously you want to help solve the problems that they have, but also too is like you want to get out of the way because a lot of times on internal objections, you're just creating objections for the homeowner not to choose you. And so you need to remove all internal objections as much as possible and follow the process every time.
And why should we give them, if we shop for them by not going through our process? Because that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
If we don't ask the budget questions, if we don't sit there and talk to them, we're shopping for them. And that's adding an objection for them that they haven't even given us.
Oh, yeah.
I think back to there's a story, I think it was you a couple years ago where it's I'm going to tell the story how I remember it, but there was a trailer house out in the middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, and we're rolling up to it, and this was back whenever I was a service tech, and I condemned the system, and Colby was going to go out there and sell the system to him, and and I was shopping for him. I made the mistake. I was an 18-year-old knucklehead. I was like, dude, I don't know, I'm not sure if these folks can afford it. Like, I'm not really sure, and so I was giving Colby, subconscious or not, whatever, because Colby was early in his sales journey at that point too, of like, oh great, I'm going into a bad sale. And the minute Colby gets in there, they're talking high efficiency, and they're mad that they can't get a 25 SEER system on a manufactured home, and they buy the system in cash, and it was one of Colby's first like $18,000 sales, and it was like, oh my gosh, all right, so that right there just tumbles any domino. You don't know.
You don't know. You don't know. Because you can make the assumption, it's like, if someone doesn't want to pay for something, it's because the value of that something has not been thoroughly communicated, or the value of that thing doesn't match what they want. And so it's like, okay, then I'll show them something cheaper. It's like, no, show them something that has a lot more value. And so, so those internal objections is a hard. That was a hard pill to swallow, and that was a big thing to swallow whenever we adjusted our pricing structure in 2018. And so
that was fun to watch.
Will had literally just got here, and Tucker was like, "Hey, Colby, we can't sell for the price that we've been selling it." I'm like, "There's no way," and I was like, "Well, we don't have a choice." So,
Colby found a way.
John and Vicky said so.
Yes, John and Vicky said so. And so instead of drowning, we decided to swim. So,
which is always a better option.
And here's the thing, and saw immediate success.
Yeah.
Really didn't see a dip in closing rates at all.
No, closing rates didn't drop. That was a big thing. That was a big concern.
For perspective, so the price increase was around 30 to 40% because we weren't accounting for some pieces of overhead, and we were miscalculating markup on cost of goods.
Yes. 2018 was a pretty watershed moment or year. Really.
Will, were you in sales in 18, or were you still kind of real estate and Spiral?
I was doing real estate Spiral and then helping with some commercial stuff.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And
houses. I was doing a lot of things.
And we weren't really departmentalizing, because at that point we had been mostly commercial, and the way we price commercial jobs is vastly different from how we have to price residential jobs. Commercial job, we don't have nearly the impact of overhead that we have because we're not there for nearly as long on a retro change out. Right. We're not having to crawl through as many attics. It's rooftop units a lot of times, and so we weren't accounting for a lot of overhead pieces. So we were pricing residential from the framework of a commercial company, and it was biting us in the butt. And so raising those prices, talk about objections.
Yes.
It was Colby,
just immediate internal objection. I'll never sell something for this price.
I was like, he did great of swallowing those. He didn't make those too external. But
internally I was just like, okay, here we go.
Raising the prices.
Okay.
And that was a piece of, I think, eye-opening that we really couldn't have accounted for. That, hey, we are worth this, and if we're going to stay in business, this is what has to happen. So it's a both and.
One of my favorite quotes from Tucker, I'm not sure if you took this from someone else, but I'm gonna give you credit. Is you are worth exactly how much someone is willing to pay you.
Pat McAfee.
There you go.
Pat McAfee.
Michael
Tucker
Scott.
Yarbrough. Michael Scott.
There is no such thing as overpay or
No,
underpay.
no.
You're worth exactly what someone's willing to give you.
Yes. And just in talking about value propositions and coming with internal objections, I think this is a good segue to go to external objections. So external objections that we'll experience all the time is timeline. Unfortunately, and this is a part of our processes and operations of doing a better job from our end, communicating to a customer of when they need to think about replacing a system. And so I've a lot of customers that we see, they're not ready to replace a system. They don't want to, one, they don't necessarily want to spend that expense, but two, they're not prepared to spend that expense because we have not done a good job at communicating to the customer of preparation. And that comes from the service side of things too, and just see having hey, this, the system's XYZ, does it make sense to you to keep doing these repairs, or would you like to have, an advisor come out and talk to you about a new system? A part of our process is that we are currently working on and getting better at is having that conversation as early as we can, so that way, whenever I get to the home, they've been prepared and they could save up for that new system within the next 3 years, as opposed to it being a surprise. Yep. And so that's a big objection that I find that I hit. And so at that point, I'm talking about financing. Financing is a great tool that you can use to help people who are unprepared, because then they can effectively, they could finance a new system. And there's benefits to replacing a new system as far as utility bills go. And I'm not going to dive into the technical side of that, but financing is a great tool to offload the surprise expense. And so 0% financing for 6 months, 12 months, and then low payments are super, super helpful for that specific objection.
Especially if the repair, something like that's like a couple $1,000.
Oh yeah.
And it's you can get a new system for $200 a month. And it's I realize, people's budgets and stuff, they've got to work that in, and they're going, okay, that's a monthly expense. But, you're not dropping thousands of dollars, initially, and you can kind of spread that out over.
And it is,
or so.
It's a hard conversation to have because the stats that we have from ACA, which is kind of our lobbying board in the HVAC world, is that most people will buy one air conditioner in their life. It's like 1.2 air conditioners in their life.
I've been saying 1.5.
Yeah. It might be that. I can't remember. But it's one and some change.
Yeah.
And so it's a conversation that you're never you can't garner much experience.
Majority of the time, nobody has ever replaced an HVAC system. Yeah. The only time that you will have is maybe the homeowners that have multiple systems on a house. Yeah. Then your frequency of replacing systems and parts goes up because you have more equipment. And so, but a big factor is it's a disservice if we don't educate the homeowner on how much a system replacement costs today.
And a piece of that continued is because they will only ever buy one, air conditioners also last quite a bit less than what they used to. And it's because of efficiency standards. It's because we have to have thinner copper for heat transfer and higher pressures for refrigerant for heat transfer and things like that. So whenever you have something at higher pressures and thinner walls, well, we're going to have problems. Yes. And so we see air conditioners, used to, they would last 20, 25 years, and it's nothing. Whereas now we're seeing them, 12 to 16 years, and that being kind of the average runtime of an air conditioner. And not going to say, you can have an anomalous system that lasts 20 years, but you need to start thinking about replacing this thing at 12, because if a compressor dies or a blower motor dies or something like that, well, the complexity of these systems is only going up due to efficiency, and the cost to repair is going up.
And this is a great objection that I get all the time is, well, I can get this thing fixed for X. Every repair is feasible, but not every repair makes sense. And that's the conversation that you have to have. It's our technicians are very skilled. And I was talking to them about this on Tuesday, is they are very skilled and they can solve basically any problem that you technically have. And everything is feasibly fixable. However, there comes a point due to age, due to the cost of run, so like utility bills, cost of repair, it doesn't make sense to continue doing a repair on a system when the benefits of replacing outweigh all the other stuff. And so there comes a point where it's every repair is feasible, but not every repair makes sense. And that's a conversation that we have to have with our homeowners. So,
I was thinking about that too, because I think it's just walking people through that process of, okay, here's the steps to replace. And you get the technical side, but I'm talking about the the like financial decision making process. You know, they got maybe they got a quote to repair this part, but their system is 15, 16 years old, and realizing, okay, hey, you know, yeah, this is probably going to fix it for a little while, but it's going to have issues later. It's going to be something else.
Yeah.
You know, so you just keep putting Band-Aids on it, you know, where you could
and
replace the system.
you can nickel and dime yourself.
Yeah.
To a really good down payment.
Yeah. And, you know, and eventually if you've repaired it enough over the years, like you've essentially bought a new system, just didn't, but you've kept your old system and you just have repaired it along the way. Yeah. And so it's just, you know, getting a lot of that sort of mindset of like, okay, hey, here's how we can transition to a new system, better utility bills. You don't have this frequent repairs.
I'll tee Bryce up for something here, because he and I talk about this a lot in our marketing. It's boot theory. So Bryce, jump into boot theory.
So it's one of those theories that you hear and you just remember the rest of your life because it just applies to so many things. But in essence, boot theory is the idea where more people this is a comparison of like skilled laborers where they're having to buy boots for their jobs, right? And they're getting a lot of wear and tear on their boots. And more often than not, they're going to cheap out and buy what's affordable for the moment, right? So they can buy, let's just say a $20 pair of boots, right? And it could last them 6 months. Comparatively, if they bought a $100 pair of boots, that could last them 6 years. That's basically boot theory in essence. And you see that economic behavior at play with our customers all the time. More often than not, people are going to opt into repairing. But what they fail to realize, and maybe they do know this, but they're thinking of that short term rather than the long term, it will cost you more money in the long term to continue doing repairs to get you by, to patch it up, than it would to just replace the system at a higher efficiency, save on your utility bills. And we're trying to, you know, in marketing, Tucker and I talk about this because we're trying to find a way to convey that to our customers, but also convey that to our team, you know, to let them know, hey, Mr. Fix-It, I love the work you're doing, but you're doing a disservice to your customers. To let your team know that sometimes by fixing things and not projecting the idea that, hey, you know, replacement would be a better option for you, you're doing a disservice to your customers.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've started pounding the drum on is, you know, like Colby and Bryce have pointed out, it's like our technicians and technicians around the country, they can fix any problem. They can fix anything. Yeah. And ultimately, looking at their disc profile, like their SC, they're kind of more cautious. They're on that side of the cautiousness spectrum, and so they're going to be the fix-it guys. They're the tinkerers, and so they can fix anything. Yeah. And a lot of times, because it's human nature, if you haven't been in a sales position, is to, if you're selling to someone else, you sell it to as if you're shopping for yourself and how I would buy. And for a technician who can fix anything, they don't mind, you know, if it's 2:00 in the morning and they got to walk outside and throw a new capacitor or contactor or fan motor on their condenser. That's a non-factor to them. Whereas one of the things that I've kind of put in perspective is add time and distance. So we always say, you know, we want to sell it like we're selling it to grandma. We don't want to sell anybody that they don't want, need, or can't afford. Yep. And so it's that treat every customer like they're your grandma. But now let's act like grandma lives in Foss, Oklahoma. And Aunt Lois has her air conditioner go out, and it's just her fan motor, but the system's 12 years old. Well, what are we going to do? Are we going to replace the fan motor? I'm not, because Foss is forever out there. We're replacing the condenser at minimum. You know, we're replacing the system more than likely. And so it's add distance and time to your sales factor, as opposed to shopping to yourself as if you can walk out of bed.
Yeah, yeah, and that was something that, you know, I think it was a revelation for Steven, our service manager. He and I were having that conversation. I was like, Steven, you can, because we were arguing about the word, because we were practicing, and he used the word feasible, and I was like, hey, instead of using the word feasible, let's use it doesn't make sense, because you can repair everything, Steven. Like, there is not a problem that you can't fix on your system or anybody else's system, but there comes a point where it just doesn't make sense. And then you ask that homeowner, hey, does it make sense to you to keep doing repairs? And so a big cost, so we're talking about, like, you know, big dollar repair, a really easy conversation to have. So let's say it's a $1,500 repair. It's like, you got to do refrigerant, you know, capacitor contactor's gone out or something, you know, you've got a high dollar repair. So it's $1,500. So you're like, okay, well, I'd rather pay, you know, someone's like, well, I'd rather pay $1,500 than, you know, paying, you know, 10 grand for a new system, whatever. And so a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take that $1,500, like, okay, you know, and then we'll turn this into a financing conversation. So $1,500, divide that by 12 months. That brings you to $125 a month that system is costing you. I can get you a brand new system for less than $200 a month with 10-year labor warranty, 10-year parts warranty, and you don't have to worry about a thing for the next 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's how much it costs you.
Yeah.
It's $125 a month, and breaking it down like on your monthly budget, and so on that repair, and so yeah.
Well, this also ties into like who your demographic is for your customer base, right? And for us, it's obviously going to be the folks who are living in a spot for long term.
Yes.
Okay. So by large, like our demos are 45 years old and up. These are people who are typically a little bit more settled down. They have their house, and everything that they put into that house is an investment at that point. So I understand whenever you're pulling out the metrics that like the average person will only replace what was
It's
it?
like 1.5 air conditioners in a life.
1.5 ACs in your lifetime. It's because you're moving around and before it becomes your problem. I did this myself. I moved out of my old house. We had a 20-plus-year-old system over there, and I moved out before I had to replace it. And so I understand that.
And then 6 months later, a new homeowner called us and we replaced it.
That is exactly what happened. And I'm grateful for that guy calling us. I'm grateful. You know why he called us is because we slapped a Yarbrough sticker on there. So
Yeah.
I think that becomes another really good objection that I come across all the time is like, well, I plan to move. It's like, okay, hey, let's talk about you're planning to move. Okay, how long have you lived in this house? And so they talk about, like, I lived in this house for 7 years. So I was like, okay, whenever you bought it, how much you paid for it? Like, oh man, I got a great deal. I paid, let's say 150, and now it's worth 200K. So 50, so you gained 50K. The system replacement cost is going to be around 10. So you gained 40K. That's the easy conversation. It's like, and that puts in perspective. And like Homer's like, well, I don't want to pay for it. It's like, okay, if you're buying a new house and you're trying to, you're looking at buying a new home, and it has one home has a 20-year-old system and the other home has a brand new system, and you like both homes. Which home would you most consider?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay, well, the same thing's going to happen to your house. Mm-hmm. Whenever you sell your home, you want this thing to sell as quick as you can. You want to get the best dollar for it. Mm-hmm. New system's going to help you do that.
Yeah. So. Well, and we're talking about HVAC stuff as well, but this also applies. I mean, we have a whole plumbing department.
Yeah.
So all of these things that we're talking about, you could, the conversational minutia changes a little bit.
Change the widget.
But the principles still apply.
Right.
So it's like air conditioner for a hot water tank. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And so it's just that constant concept of offering the best service to customers. Whether that's HVAC, plumbing, electrical, whatever the trade is, just change, like what change the widget. And so I think that's important to note on that front, because we use the phrase, oh crud, I think the numbers change, but what's the
numbers change, margins don't.
Yeah, numbers change, but margins don't. So it's that concept of like, so the thing you're talking about might change, but the concepts all remain.
Concept
the same.
and the process remains.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And so obviously there's 100 different ways to complete sales. You can approach it, and it's not a one size fits all. Education sales is just our way of doing it. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of companies out there who are giants that they don't have, because they need the speed of information. They need the speed of being in the customer's house, just because the size they are. Yeah. They have to pass it off to a project manager. Yeah. And so that sales guy isn't really getting to interact. Right. And so there's no one right way to complete a sales process. Yeah. So, but looking at it this way and kind of addressing it for how we do things, it kind of paints the picture of there's multiple paths to success. There's not just one way to build a company and build a sales department. It really tees up for find what works for you and your team and how comfortable you guys are in your sales process and make it happen. But at the end of the day, you have to be aware that every seat in the company is a sales position and that everyone has to be a closer.
Yes.
Period. Yeah. It doesn't matter. We have to move product in order to remain in business.
Yes.
So make sure that however you're going to prescribe your sales process to your team, make sure that you're consistent, make sure that you communicate clearly what the outcomes need to be, and make sure how you want things to roll. Yeah. Guys?
And keep it simple. And keep it simple. And so I guess as far as Do we want to follow up with one more? Because I don't know if we've hit some of the questions.
I feel like we've reading through them, we've hit everything.
Fantastic.
Can I ask
I knew we were coming up on
You
time.
I had it. I was teed up, man.
You did. But
transitioned.
I was like,
I
guys,
thought you were closing it out, and I was like,
subscribe.
"Are we done? Really?"
I got a question, and my
Sorry, Tuck.
So I have a quick question about ego, because it seems like that's at the forefront of this whole conversation, right? You had two things. As a salesperson, get out of your own way, right?
Yep.
That's ego.
Yep.
Ego can become an issue there on the individual level when you're dealing with a customer, but also as a business level, as a business owner, price yourself for what you're worth.
Yes.
That's the other aspect of ego, right? So you're playing at two different fronts. How do you confront that? What's a best practice for somebody who has to understand how to optimize that ego for, like, hey, I need to price myself for what I'm worth, but I also need to understand how to get out of my own way.
So I think the idea of, I think you got to be careful and not tie ego and worth in the same seat, because a lot of times you're like, well, ego says I am worth X. Well, you could still drop your ego and still be worth. And so I think about intrinsic value, just for you as a human being, like how God has created you. And so like I think value, like my time is valuable. The amount of effort that I spend with every homeowner, regardless of whether or not I'm going to make a sale or not, like the interaction is valuable. And if they're going to use me, I want to price myself in such a way where I can get out of the way and let my team do what they can do. Mm-hmm. And so
I think that that's super important. I think knowing your numbers is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, okay, if I want to remain in business and provide service for the homeowners that I've committed to serve and then serve my team, like I have to sell things for this amount.
Yeah.
And so and then there's that aspect of things, and then kind of what you said, getting out of your own way. That's another aspect of education. It was like, okay, well, wait, if I have to sell this stuff, I've got to be willing to put those things on the table. And so it's something I say it as a joke, and it kind of is a joke, but once I get through talking to the customers about the systems, I'm talking about the add-ons, and I jokingly say, I said, all right, I'm going to turn into a waiter at a restaurant. I'm just showing you things on the menu. And so that's my version of getting out of the way. It's like, look, like these things that are really great products, and I explain the products. I have no idea if they're going to want this stuff or not, but I'm going to show them the entire menu so they know, so that they can select what they select, and I'm not buying for them.
Yeah.
And so that's. But I think it all comes back to kind of what Colby's saying, educating yourself, and then knowing your numbers and why you're selling things the way you are.
And to add on to the numbers piece of it, you're obviously, like as a business owner, your thought is going to be like, oh, I'm worth the most,
right?
But it goes back to the quote of Pat McAfee. There's no such thing as overpay or underpay. You're worth exactly what someone is willing to give you and exactly what you're willing to accept. Mm-hmm. And so the market will tell you.
Yeah.
And so if you're out there trying to sell something for more than what the perceived value is, what the value you're offering is, well, then the market's going to tell you. And so if we're trying to maintain a 60% close rate.
And have the humility to look at the market and say, oh, okay.
Yeah. And then we can have, if we can't maintain a 60% close rate at this margin, and if we lower our prices and we can't make money at those, then we need to have a different conversation about knowing our numbers.
Yes.
And so each informs the other.
Yes.
And so I think that's how you can keep everything in check for sure.
Yeah.
And being out of the way. Yeah. Because ego also said in 2018 that I couldn't sell for that price.
Yeah.
And so I think it's just important to understand that, like, to not let ego and self-worth sit at the same table, and knowing yourself, knowing your worth and how much you can charge for, should charge for, so that everyone on your team has success. Because it is a disservice to my team if I don't sell that thing for how much I need to sell it for, because one, they don't get money put in the profit sharing, we lose money, and we, worst case scenario, we go out of business. And on the flip side, if I don't sell that to the homeowner and put as much value in that as possible, then it is a disservice whenever we do that install, and then we can't go back because one, we're not in business anymore. Two, if I'm trying to sell it for as cheap as possible and I'm skipping ductwork, I'm skipping things that need to be addressed that should have been communicated about, then that's a problem.
Then you're the bad guy.
Then I'm the bad guy. And so part of our sales process is making sure that we investigate the system itself, ask questions to the homeowner, so that way they have the most success with a system replacement with us as possible, and they have the best experience as possible, and our team will have the best experience possible as far as being compensated for what they do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
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 I think that's just
To land this plane for the second time. We just did a real quick pass. Had some turbulence there.
the runway was foggy. We took off again.
We found the lights again.
I will
But,
take responsibility. I'm sorry.
to land the plane again, guys. We appreciate your time. Thank you for listening. Like, subscribe. If you have comments, questions, thoughts, hit us up in the comment section on our socials. We'd love to engage. But other than that, let's get after it. Here we go.
There we go. Have a good one.